Insurance should be for things we don't expect. So we all agreed to contribute a little bit now so that we're covered in case something really big happens. Like if I get hit by a car.
I would definitely contribute to you getting hit by a car. Health insurance is about people getting the care that they want.
Well, Libby thinks I should get a health savings account plan where I just do catastrophic coverage.
And it's because of people like Ruby that there are so many Americans right now who don't have health coverage. For this to work, everybody needs to pay their fair share. Right? It's a delicate balance, but with the right focus and forced intervention, everything will work out perfectly. Do you have a screwdriver?
I just don't understand why it has to be so expensive.
It's because of how people treat insurance. We're all divorced from the actual cost, but mandated to pay for certain things, completely destroying market incentives to reduce costs. You can see about it right on here. Hello?
Hey, Libby, it's your conscience. I think it's pretty sickening for you to be talking about people's health and vulgar free markets.
And the best way to reduce costs is with free markets.
Look, I'm not a doctor, though that is a group of people I'm pretty sure I know a little bit more than. It just seems to me, all this talk about health insurance and free markets, it's just making me more sick.
Fine. I'll get going.
Thank you.
Actually, there is one more thing that I want to say.
Tell you what, why don't I go get you something to eat?
Thanks, Gov. You're always looking out for me.
I'm always looking out for everyone. Hey, sweetie, I brought dinner.
You're the best.
Of course. By the way, surprise! I found a health insurance plan for you. I already enrolled you and signed you up.
Wait, what?
Alexis, I really care for you. And you seem so confused about all the choices, and I really wanted to help, and this is a big part of what I do, is protect people from choices. Anyways, it's a great plan. I mean, check out this sweet deal you're getting on pediatric dental.
But I don't have kids.
Yeah, but other people have kids.
I don't have kids. I mean, that's not even insurance. That's just giving my money to the insurance company.
Yeah, who then use it to give to other people to pay for their insurance. Understand?
This is more than my entire grocery budget and my car payment combined.
That is so cool that you can just do math in your head like that.
How am I supposed to afford this?
You can always apply for a subsidy.
But I thought the whole point was that I'm helping other people pay for their insurance.
It's complicated. Yeah, and when things get that complicated, it's probably best to just let other people worry about it. Besides, you have other concerns right now. Paying back your student loans. Remember to vouch for you on those.
I know. You know, let's eat. I could kill for a burger right now.
Burger? No way. I mean, now that you're in the health pool, people are really counting on you to stay healthy. So, salad for you. No dressing.
Seems like a double standard.
Nope. It's a double cheeseburger.
All right. Oh, that's right. I was going to try something new. Does anybody have any questions before we start? So we'll be wrapping up.
So I got my essay written, and I've been working on it for about a week. So now I'm going to show you.
All right. YouTube rolling me into the next one. Try to keep the screen alive. I had an idea I should have thought of a long time ago. Oh, perfect. Here we go. I don't even really need the upper one, do I? I just do that. What do you think? The whiteboard with the little light on it? I just thought, I don't know. You guys tell me if it's better to have the wood grain or not. I will, but I thought if I put that white, then maybe it's not too bad. Okay, so, let's see, what did I decide? I think I decided something new. Let's see. I try to keep the screen alive. I had an idea I should have thought of a long time ago. we got LoveGov kind of in a fun way, highlighting some of the issues that can be out there and some of the tensions that exist that you guys probably aren't too, accustomed to as young people on insurance and paying insurance and, all that kind of stuff. So it kind of introduces you to some of the potential complications and conflicts that can come about. So that's where we're going to start off today. We've got kind of 4 areas for government failure. So 4 common factors with government failure. So before, we spent time with market failure as well. We had the externalities, the public goods, the lack of information. Those were areas of market failure. And so we kind of left off last time saying, well, we sometimes just say, oh, well, government needs to fix it then. Let's let the government do education. Let's let the government do healthcare. Let's let the government do this or that, and it'll be a democracy, and we're all one united American, and we can just vote on things, and we'll get these things done, right? We'll get it done through the political process. Well, as you probably learned, it turns out not to be that easy to do that. And so the first thing that we're going to look at is called the special interest effect. Special interest effect. All right, so what does that mean? Well, politicians have strong incentive to favor the views of special interest groups. Special interest groups. Even if the action is inefficient. Even if the action is inefficient. So we're going to talk about log rolling and pork barrel legislation. Maybe you've heard some of that, pork barrel legislation. That's kind of some of the things that evolved because of this special interest effect. And we talked about this a bit yesterday. In my steel example from yesterday, who was the special interest group? The steel company or the steel consumers? Who was the special interest group? The steel producers or the steel consumers? Producers or consumers?
Producers.
The producers, right? So it was concentrated benefits, right? So it kind of relates a little bit to that concentrated benefits and widespread cost that we saw caused a problem. And so it's possible that politicians can kind of be captured a little bit. So what is the strong incentive to favor the views of the special interest groups? What do they get from the special interest groups, potentially? Donations, campaign contributions, right? So politicians, so kind of the key point here is that they need campaign contributions to help fulfill their goal, to help fulfill their goal of, what did we talk about yesterday? What's their objective? What's their goal for politicians? Get elected and stay in office, right? So goal of get elected and stay in office. All right, so campaign contribution reform has been an issue on the table for many, many, many years, year after year after year. The problem is nobody has a lot of incentive to try to really change it, because the benefits of campaign finance reform is widespread or concentrated. Who benefits from us fixing this system where big corporations can potentially donate to politicians and therefore having their special interests served? Who really benefits from reforming that and getting rid of it? Who really benefits? Is it the voters? The general population? Do they benefit from getting rid of that, let's call it borderline corruption? I hesitate on that because it's legal. So it's there's a famous economist that we'll talk about between this class and next that called it plunder, and there's legal plunder and there's illegal plunder. And he actually wrote this back in the late 1800s, and he thought that first of all, plunder is kind of an old word, I should say. What is plunder? When a pirate plunders a ship, what are they doing?
He takes the ship.
Yeah, takes the ship or steals the contents, right? So you're plundering, you're stealing. And so he wrote that the worst type of plunder is legal plunder. Legal plunder. So in other words, under our current laws, corporations going to politicians, serving their special interests, getting laws changed to their favor, it's all legal. It's like legal stealing, in a sense, potentially. It would be a little bit of a stronger word for it, right? It's serving their special interests. So that's the worst type of plunder or stealing is legal plunder. All right, so the benefits then go to who if we got rid of this? How are we going to get better public policy that doesn't serve special interest, but rather the broad interest, right? If we did that, so who's benefiting? It's the general public, right? So is the benefit widespread or concentrated in that regard? Widespread. So we're back to the problem of the benefits of getting rid of this current system we have. The benefits are widespread, and the concentrated cost of getting rid of it, the way I'm phrasing it, right? The politicians are going to lose because they like getting this money in, they like getting elected, they like staying in office. The corporations, of course, like it, so if they got rid of the current system, that would be a huge cost to them because they like the opportunity to try to sway public policy in their opinion. So again, we've got widespread benefits and concentrated cost, and so that fell into the category where we're just not going to have policy changed. So this is nothing new. This is something that was being taught back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. Economic class after economic class after economic class. We're like, oh, we got to fix this. We got to fix this. Even me as being a 50-year-old, I remember when I was 20-something, we got to fix this. We got to fix this, right? The Reagan era, the Bush era, the Clinton era, the Obama era, Republican, Democrat, it don't matter. The system looks like this because the incentives are perverse in terms of being able to get it changed. And so we tend not to see change in this area. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what this log rolling and pork barrel effect is. So we're going to do a little chart like we did last time. So leave yourself, let's see, what do I got here? I got 5 columns of information I'm going to put up here. And I got this thing so small. So here's the voters again. The voters in different districts. So voters in different districts, and we've got A, B, C, D, and E. A, B, C, D, and E. Sorry, I'm going right to the bottom of the board. Maybe I should have brought this up center. I think, yeah, what the heck. I'll take the time to let's put it up nice and high for you guys. This is a fun one to work through. Okay, so voters, district, A, B, C, D, and E. All right, and then we've got a potential construction project in different forms. So you've heard President Biden, maybe you haven't heard, I know you guys listen to TikTok and other things, and so I don't expect you to learn this, by the way. I don't really care. I think it might even be smart in some degree, but some of you might stay tuned in, that we're going to do infrastructure projects. Even Trump started this. Obama, not so much, but Trump said we've got failing bridges. Did you guys hear in Pittsburgh a bridge just failed this morning? All of you listening to the morning news, or that comes on your news feed along with, you know, what's happening to the latest stars in the NFL and other places. So a bridge just failed. I mean, tragic thing. I didn't hear if there was lives lost or not, but that happened up in Minneapolis too, and there was actually a school bus on the bridge when it went. So this just happened in Pittsburgh this morning, and coincidentally, apparently, the news said this morning, Biden is scheduled to talk there today, and just by coincidence, the bridge failed somehow. So there's been this failing bridges in our airports and blah, 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 different types of infrastructure that we're going to have some money flowing towards. And so Biden's on that as well. And so, you know, why do these projects not get done? Why don't we keep them up? And so that's what we're going to look at here on the front end of, let's say that there's a bridge here that affects District A. So we've got a construction of a bridge. So construction of a bridge that helps District A. And so that is going to be a big positive to District A of a plus 10. But then none of the other districts get any benefit from it. So let's just call it a minus 3, because the policy would be we're going to collect taxes from all the districts and we're going to fund this bridge project, but it's really only going to help people in A. And then we have another possible project of a post office. But the post office is located in District B, so they get all the benefits. And nobody else has any net benefit from that. It's basically just a cost through taxation. All right, and then lastly, we have a new stadium that's going to hold concerts, and they hope to get a pro football team, but at least it'll be for the college and use for other people. So there's a new stadium, and that's in District C. So with the new stadium, everybody loses except District C. All right, so what is the net benefit overall of the construction of the bridge? Is that an efficient thing to do all on its lonesome or not? No, right? 3, 6, 9, 12, minus 12 plus 10 gives us a minus 2, which means it fails the test. It's not economically efficient. It's not EE. It fails our sniff test of a cost-benefit analysis overall. How about this one? Same thing. And of course, the last one's the same thing too. So all of these are not economically efficient. Okay, so the politicians have an idea though. What if we pose all three? What if we pose all three? If we pose one individually, is this going to pass through majority rule? No. So we put up the bridge project, sorry, voters say no. We put up the post office, sorry, voters say no. We put up the stadium, sorry, voters say no. Politicians say, oh, let's put them all together here. And is it going to pass? Yes. Because these guys get their 10, these guys get their 10, these guys get their 10, and these guys end up footing the bill. Minority ends up with a kind of a bigger loss to the tune of 6, 12, 18, right? But these cities have it offsetting with the plus 10. They get the minus 3, but each individual, that's still a plus 4. So they're going to vote for it. So what we've done is we've rolled together multiple projects, which then got enough to pass through a democracy, through a democratic process of majority rule, even though it's not the most efficient thing to do. All right, so let's kind of, before I write anything down, is everybody cool on that? Any questions? So let's make sure we summarize everything here. So let's just say summary. Number one, none of the projects individually would pass under democratic process. Let's just put democracy. I don't want to confuse things with like Democrats and Republicans. We're just talking about democracy, which is majority rule. So none of the projects individually would pass under democracy. They would fail 4-to-1. Fail 4-to-1. Number two, if we bundle all three together, if politicians bundle all three together, it will pass, even though it is not economically efficient. It will pass 3-2. And then we could add on here the kind of the gain. The gain for the people who favor it is +10 -3. So you might see a homework problem kind of similar to this where you have to kind of reason through why it's 3-2. So the gainers here are +6 with all the three. And I kind of went the wrong direction here, by the way. By doing all three, it's this way, right? So this way we're +6. We could total it this way. Let's call this the bundle. With the bundle, we're +6. We're +6. I'm sorry, we're +4. The negatives are 6. I bet one of you were sitting there thinking that. So we're +4. We got the -3, -3, 10, +4, +4. And then these guys are the ones that are paying the bill here. 3, 6, 9, -9, -9. And if we add up the bundle effect here, we get 4 + 4 + 4 is how much? 12. -9 to -9, -18. So the net effect is -6. 12 minus the 18, which notice is the net effect down here. So we end up with a total -6. But it still passes. Democracy can fail us. Democracy is not enough. You'll hear people say, that country needs democracy, democracy, democracy. It falls short. It's not good enough. It's necessary, but not sufficient. We need other things in place to help an economy and a society flourish. Democracy is an important ingredient, don't get me wrong, but it's not sufficient to get us to where we think we can be in terms of making everything better because of situations like this. Okay, questions or comments? Let's see if I can find this one. I got one video. I have it saved on my other thing, but I think I can hopefully find it. There it is, this is it.
that expression, right? You build a better mousetrap, they'll feed a cat to your door. Means I can get rich. Well, is improving things can be difficult. Is there an easier way? Well, yes. There's crony capitalism.
Oh.
You make friends with important people, the people who set the rules. Scratch my back.
I'll rewind it a little bit. You didn't miss much with that.
So maybe we'll get to it. Suppose you're in the window business. How do you get a leg up on the competition? Sure would help if government gave you a special tax credit and gave your customers
I think I'll
stimulus
just leave it
money to
play.
buy your products. Would help even more if somehow you could get the president and the vice president of the United States to say nice things about your company. But come on, that's not possible, is it? No company could be that fortunate.
There are three big companies in the window business: Kellogg, Anderson, and Marvin.
Marvin Windows and Doors fit your vision.
The recession's been tough on these companies. But then there's also a much smaller company, Sirius Materials. Sirius is booming, according to this article in Fortune. On a roll, according to Inc. magazine, which put Sirius' CEO in its cover, with a story titled, How to Build a Great Company. How did he do it? Well, he had some help from high places.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for your unwavering support.
That's Vice President Biden's thing.
Without you and the Recovery Act, this would not have been possible.
Biden returned the compliments.
You're not just churning out windows. You're making some of the most energy-efficient windows in the world. I would argue the most energy-efficient windows in the world.
Other window makers say, no, our windows are just as energy efficient, but the vice president hasn't visited their companies or even mentioned their names. And why am I talking about the vice president?
I'm here today representing Sirius Materials.
How many company officials get to make introductions like this?
It is my distinct honor to introduce the President of the United States, President Barack Obama.
The president gave a speech on energy policy that cited, guess which company?
Sirius Materials just reopened, as you mentioned, a manufacturing plant outside of Pittsburgh. These workers will now have a new mission, producing some of the most energy-efficient windows in the world.
Wow, what a dream endorsement. And just last week, the president announced a new set of tax credits for so-called green companies. The only window company on the list? Sirius Materials.
This is a story of how a new economy, predicated on innovation and efficiency, is not only helping us today, but inspiring a better tomorrow.
Actually, I think it's a story about crony capitalism. It's almost as if the government and Sirius Materials are partners. The company VP of Policy testified in Congress.
Thank you for the opportunity to appear here today and share Sirius Materials' experience in creating green jobs.
And here he is in this picture with so-called energy leaders at the U.S. Department of Energy. And who's the woman in the middle? Kathy Zoe, who oversees the government's weatherization program. She has big plans for your tax money, as she explained in a conference.
Where literally SWAT teams go into neighborhoods and they retrofit every single house and every single business on Main Street.
Oh, and I left out a little fact. Kathy Zoe is the wife of the Vice President of Policy of Sirius Windows. So of all the window companies in America, maybe it's a coincidence that the one that gets presidential, vice presidential attention, and a special tax credit is one where company executives give thousands of dollars to the Obama campaign, and where the policy director spends nights at home with the energy department's weatherization boss. It could be coincidence, and there's apparently nothing illegal about this. In Kathy Zoe's ethics agreement, she did disclose her marriage and says she would recuse herself from any matter that had a predictable effect on her financial interests. But it sure looks funny to me. And it's odd that even the liberal media has so much interest in this one company.
Vice President Biden says the stimulus bill's funding for making buildings more energy efficient is expected to drive up demand for the kinds of windows made by Sirius Materials, which has caused the company to ramp up its production. And that's how it works. Economic stimulus. Ta-da!
Tim Carney has written 2 books on crony capitalism, including one aptly called The Big Ripoff, How Big Business and Big Government Steal Your Money. Dennis Calabrese was chief of staff for a former majority leader of the House, and in that job he says he saw the ills of crony capitalism firsthand. So, what ills are you referring to?
Well, John, the American public, I guess, thinks that Congress goes and deliberates serious issues all day and works on major philosophical problems and debate each other.
It's the big picture.
Right, and really, a typical day in Congress is people from the private sector coming and pleading their cases for help. And it may be help for a specific company, like the window example. It may be help for an industry, an entire industry. It may be help for United States companies versus overseas companies, protectionism. But the business...
And they always make a good case. You have to be a really principled congressman to be tough enough to say no.
Particularly if they're from your district and they're giving you campaign contributions.
So your congressman is sucking up to these people.
That's one, there's so many varieties that it's hard to narrow it down, but that's a common one. But this window company you named, I'm sure it's got a lot of great employees. The problem is, so they're competitors. The competitors have, those jobs are just every bit as important as the jobs in that company. Congress picks winners and losers in the free enterprise system. That's wrong. That's corrupt.
People think it's the job of the wise people in government.
And they're wrong. And Congress has led them to believe that. Congress wants you to believe that free enterprise will be successful if the government gets involved in it. It'll be more successful. In fact, the record is less successful every time they get involved. And of course, then it's used to criticize capitalism. Well, look, it doesn't work. It's not fair. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is an unholy alliance, and it is being perpetrated, and the losers are the taxpayers and the voters and the stockholders of the companies.
And Tim Carney, this is what you wrote about in The Big Ripple.
Yes, it's been going on since the beginning of the Republic, unfortunately. I think it's getting worse under the end of the Bush administration, beginning of the Obama administration.
As government
gets bigger. You see it everywhere. I think healthcare is one of the greatest examples where the president talks as if he's battling the special interests, but he cut a deal early on with the drug companies. His healthcare bill subsidizes drug companies. It keeps the ban on re-importation of drugs from Canada going. It provides mandates that we have to buy health insurance. Again, this is not business going out and trying to convince consumers to buy their products. They're convincing politicians to force people to pay for their products.
Okay, baby. Scratch my back.
Okay, so now notice that was Vice President Biden, right?
Kansas homeowners,
So
if
this
you're an
was-
Evergy customer, then
This was long before the current pandemic. Do you think this went on with the pandemic a little bit, with Pfizer and Moderna and all the drugs and stuff? Yeah, it's just business as usual, right? So that video is actually June 18th was 2019, but that's when that video was posted. That's not when that happened, because we had Trump in between where we're at now with Biden. Biden's in his second year, Trump had 4. So the Obama-Biden regime was quite a long time ago already, right? So same old thing, it doesn't matter what president's in office. The incentives are distorted for us to get kind of some results that we'd hope to get. So that was one of the ones we're going to talk about is crony capitalism. I wanted to show that video because it kind of captures a lot of the issues that we're putting with these 4 common factors. So we started off with special interests, and so we had some special interest groups. That one was all the more interesting with the CEO of the company sleeping with the politician. That just stunk, right? I mean, it just kind of shows that we're all human beings, including the people in the White House, and so we shouldn't expect things to dramatically change when they do get elected. Okay, any last comments on this one? All right, so number 2 on our list is short-sightedness. The short-sightedness effect. So what do you think short-sighted? What does it mean to be short-sighted? Let me give you guys time to talk here. So short-sightedness. Yeah. I want to say Tyler, but that's not right. Is it? Oh, good. Tyler?
Isn't it when you only see the effects for like the short term?
Okay, good. Yeah, so we're kind of bringing the time dimension in, right? So we tend to be short-sighted. Why don't people save more for retirement? Because they're short-sighted. Like now seems a lot more important than 20 years from now, right? So short-sightedness. So now we're going to see how that relates to the political realm here. So let me see. How do we get the black? Run my blue into the ground. All right. Okay, number 2. The short-sightedness effect. All right, so issues that yield clearly defined current benefits at the expense of future costs that are difficult to measure and identify. So the short-sightedness effect is issues that yield clearly defined current benefits at the expense of future costs that are difficult to measure and identify. So let's start off with the example number one. This is a little bit outside of the government spectrum here, but personal retirement savings. So this is one maybe we can all relate to, even you guys, saving money for something. It's like there's a strong pull for us to favor the now rather than the future. So the now you dominates the future you. It's a lot easier when you think about what am I going to do with $100? I could save it and put it into my retirement, and then 20, 40, well for you guys, 40 years from now, that $100 is going to grow into $1,000, and that's going to help me retire, right? Think about that versus what you can do with that $100 on a Friday night here, tonight, today, right now, right? Which one has the clearly defined current benefits? What I can do tonight to now, right? And so when I start thinking about the future costs of that, if I go out and party tonight with the $100, that means I'm not going to have a potential $1,000 40 years from now from that 100, right? And all of a sudden this gets pretty murky, right? And as human beings, we can tend to like say, let's not worry about that. We'll figure that one out later. It's more important for me to party tonight with this $100. I know what I can do with the $100 tonight, right? So that's kind of the short-sightedness effect for you personally. How does that impact politicians then, thinking about that? So now let's put this back into the political realm. Let me get Tyler down here. What's your last name again, Tyler?
DiMatteo.
Tyler DiMatteo. Okay, gotcha. Anybody else speak today yet? I've been kind of talking a lot. That's why I'm going to get you guys speaking. Jay, you did? Actually, even you didn't, Jay. I don't think you spoke. Or did you raise your hand? Oh.
No, I spoke earlier about, you said something earlier about,
Did he?
He did.
He did? All right, Jay, you're on. That's what I mean. I was surprised I hadn't heard, you know. I'm becoming accustomed and enjoy your contributions, so I was wondering. Okay, all right, we'll get you down. I just don't want to skip over. I don't think I got any Zoomers yet. Zoomers, you better be ready. Oriana, you need to have your picture, and Jerice needs your face. Should be representing about 25 to 33% of the screen. Okay. Tyler, number between 3 and 11. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Chris, you're the lucky one here. So what do you think about politicians? They get into office. You know, what would be an example of something? It doesn't have to be real specific, but what their incentives are, thinking about the short-sightedness effect. And what's your last name? Daniels. All right, so look at that. You're checked already. You haven't even said a darn thing. So you're on the board. What do you got? Come on, come on. I'm not gonna let you off the hook. I'll try to make it real easy for you. I want this to be low stakes. Did you get this example here? Right? So you personally, things today. What's the objective of the politician? That we went over last, we wrote it down. You can look in your notes if you want to, but what does that politician want to do? What's their objective? Somebody help them out? Go ahead, just shout it out. Get elected, or stay in office if they already were elected. So they want to get elected or stay in office. And so now they come up with policies and stuff. So what's their incentive here that would kind of capture some ideas of the short-sightedness effect? And again, you don't need a specific example, but do politicians spend money? Yeah. Okay, so now tell me about where they want to spend money, knowing that they want to get elected or spend. Let's take in a politician that's in office currently. They want to stay in office.
Maybe like a company that they know is going to stay on for a long time.
Okay, so a company that's already been helping them to change the policy. They know that an election's coming up, and so even though putting it into the window industry and giving money to that window company doesn't totally make sense, right, from economic efficiency, the cost of that spending will be down the road somewhere, right? It'll be paid in the future even if we don't have the money today. Okay, good. Somebody else? Sorry, give me your name. Evan. Last name?
Johnson.
All right, go ahead.
Would they want to spend money on things that will happen like now instead of worrying about things in the future because people don't really care about
Right.
things in the future?
So if we can come up with a policy that has the benefits now, that's great. So in other words, would it be a good idea for a politician to spend a bunch of money on something that we won't see the benefits for 10 years? Even if it's economically efficient, like we've done the analysis, if we just invest in a bridge, the roads and bridges, or maybe that's a bad example, but we build a new bridge or something, then that's going to cause economic growth in this particular area or this function, or maybe it's Wi-Fi or something, and over the next 20 years, we're going to see a bunch of benefits. But we have to spend a chunk of money today, versus spending a chunk of money on something that the voters would get today, right? So they can play to that personal thing here that the now you wants to see the politician do something that happens today, right? And so there's a lack of incentive for us to invest in longer term projects. So yeah, that was a good one, Evan. All right, any others come to mind, or any comments or questions? All right, so let's put that on the board here. So kind of example number 2. Politician has incentive to do projects that play to the now you voter. To the now you voter. Even if its long-term effect is not economically efficient. So similar to you choosing to spend money rather than save it for retirement, now the politician's in the same thing, thinking of you as a voter. That's how I'm going to get to stay in office if I play to that for you and make it look like you're a doer. Politician wants to be seen as a take action, get results. And that's not healthy for a lot of things that we could use the government spending money on. So our example is, I don't even know if these are so much examples here, but example number 3, or comment number 3, maybe I should say key point. How about that? So key point, politician has no incentive to spend money today on policy changes that have long-term benefits. Okay, questions or comments there? All right, so number 3. I'll get rid of this. Number 3 is rent seeking. Rent seeking. Which is a weird word. I kind of wish we had a better word for it. But this is the one we have here, rent seeking. So number 3. All right, so we'll just define it. So rent seeking is actions by individuals and interest groups designed to restructure public policy in a manner that will either directly or indirectly redistribute more income to themselves. Actions by individuals and interest groups designed to restructure public policy in a manner that will either directly or indirectly redistribute more income to themselves. So I don't know if you guys have heard, but you guys know who Dr. Anthony Fauci is? Have you heard his name a little bit over the last couple years? So he's been accused of having some interest in some of the medical stuff that's been going on, which right on the face of it, attorneys have what's known as a conflict of interest. You guys know what an attorney conflict of interest is? If an attorney has a conflict of interest, what would that mean?
Them liking the same thing or something like that?
Like they can't tell them any and everything. Certain persons, like the situations with conflict of interest.
Okay, so they have a relationship, and in fact, that video showed a potential conflict of interest, right? Where we had the senator proposing legislation, and his wife was the CEO of that company. That's clearly some sort of conflict of interest. Maybe it's completely innocent, but it poses a conflict of interest. And so when attorneys have that, part of the law is they have to recuse themselves. So the legal word is recuse themselves if they have an interest. So imagine that an attorney is being asked to fight against a corporation, let's just say a drug company, Pfizer or something, has some legislation, and an attorney's asked to do that, and the attorney says, sorry, I have like a 5% stake, I have like $1 million invested in Pfizer. I can't fight against them, right? I have a conflict of interest. You have a vested interest in something. And so the attorney, by law, by the way, says right on the front end, sorry, I have to recuse myself. I can't participate in this legal action. right? I'm out of this because I have this conflict of interest. So that is things that we try to avoid because it doesn't make sense that we'd want to do that. So here with rent seeking, we're actually going to try to legally change, restructure public policy so that it is allowed for them to redistribute more income to themselves. So this is legal, by the way. So rent seeking all by itself is not illegal. So let's put a little note here. This is not illegal. Usually, let me just put usually, because I guess there is, we could say that the attorney was rent seeking, but they were doing it in an illegal way. But the way we're characterizing it, rent seeking is not illegal usually. So there's nothing wrong under current US law for companies to go up and lobby their politicians for changes. So what rent seeking does though is instead of them making drugs or building windows or building houses, they're spending part of their money on sending representatives up to Washington, D.C. to have lunch and play golf with the politicians to try to persuade them to change policy, right? So here you've got a company now spending money for what? To make their windows better as part of the process, build up lumber supply chains and glass manufacturing. No, they're not doing anything with the window business. They're going to Washington, D.C. to ask for money in the form of subsidies or different law changes or something that's really outside of the scope of what they really do as a business. So that is the idea of rent seeking. All right, so let me put that down. So, example, window business sending employee to Washington, D.C. to ask for a subsidy for its business. Under current law, there's nothing illegal about that. But economists want to make a distinction between them seeking profits by making windows better and selling windows versus making profit by going to Washington, D.C. and trying to get policy change. You see the difference there? So that's what we're trying to highlight. So, they make profit. Their business is window sales. Window production and sales. But, here's the big but, US law might make it profitable for them to do that activity instead. But US law might make it profitable to seek handouts from government instead. So, have you heard of the idea of corporate welfare? Corporate welfare. That's kind of a buzzword that gets thrown out there every once in a while. this is basically it. The government has kind of set up systems in place to where politicians have incentives like we've shown to dish out money to different good causes. And all of a sudden the business starts to get creative, like, I could be that good cause government, I could be that good cause government, right? Pick me, pick me. I'll send a person up to talk to you about how great our windows are, and maybe they do a little bit different production process and they fall in the guidelines for a handout. So we can kind of think of this as corporate welfare. Okay, questions or comments there?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah.
When politicians own stock in a company and then they do something that benefits that company, is that illegal? Is that legal?
So it's illegal depending on how they did it. So what they look for, and politicians have been busted on this in the past, is if they actively bought or sold a stock after some legislation has been passed, then they can get in trouble. Then it would be an ethics violation. And so once in a while that comes up. They've gotten pretty savvy over time to not be that dumb. And so instead, unfortunately what might happen is that they're not going to do it themselves, but they're going to tell their golfing buddy about it. And so, hey, golfing buddy, we're passing some new legislation to where the window company's going to get some sweetheart deal. You might want to buy that company, wink, wink, and maybe you want to cut me in on half of that, wink, wink, right? So that kind of thing, it opens the door for that type of thing. So I don't think most politicians do that type of thing, but certainly some have over time, right? Because that can affect the valuation of the company and cause the stock to go up or down. So if a politician is instead just buying mutual funds and long-term, and they always, they have their allocation of this or that, right? And they're not actively trading stocks, they're probably fine. And they might own that company, but they're not actively doing something different than what they've historically been doing prior to the policy change. Does that make sense? Good question, Dawson. Anybody else? Okay, our last category, these are all kind of interrelated in a sense, is the one that video brought up, crony capitalism. And so a lot of these concepts definitely are interrelated with each other, but they don't have to be. So rent seeking can be done, and it doesn't mean that a deal was actually struck. And so this last one is more of a deal got actually struck. So crony capitalism. I kind of wish this book didn't say it that way. I prefer cronyism. And the reason is, a lot of people think crony capitalism is capitalism, and that's why they're anti-capitalist. They don't like, free markets, ooh, boo. We got greedy, evil people that are running these big corporations, and that's what capitalism is. And I favor communism. We should all just share things, and the government should run it, and everything would be in more harmony. So this is not capitalism. It's not like a softer, friendlier form. It's not is what it is. It doesn't have to be this way, but it can be this way, and that's the thing that sucks. And so crony capitalism, I like to put it as big government and big business playing kissy face with each other. So big government, that's going to be my first official definition here. Big government and big business playing kissy face. I better put that in quotes. Kissy face with each other. Okay, so your more textbook definition here, I will give to, so you got, so you have that down. So this is kind of the Russ definition. So here's the textbook definition, a little more stodgy, not quite as fun. Is a situation where the allocation of resources is determined by political favors. Political favors rather than by consumer preferences. Consumer preferences translated through the market profit and loss system. This is a mouthful. So we'll try to unpack this. All right. A situation where society's resources, if you want to think of this allocation of resources, is determined by political favors rather than by the marketplace. Consumer preferences translated into the profit and loss system. So let's take a look at ooh, that would be a good one, but it sounds not quite good. I want to make sure we got this consumer preferences translated through the profit and loss system. So this is kind of the private market, right? So we've been talking about the marketplace and how do things get allocated. We have people trying to pursue happiness who have the right to life and liberty, and so they decide to sell beer. And then we've got consumers who want to buy some beer, and the interaction of the beer drinkers and the beer suppliers gives us a price that helps allocate. So if that price of a 12-pack is $14, and there's 100 12-packs going out, $14 now is kind of the mechanism that helps allocate resources to beer production. What are we going to do with barley? What are we going to do with water? What are we going to do with these machines? What are we going to do with people and labor, right? So the market system, that invisible hand that Adam Smith talked about, is going to guide human behavior through freedom and allocate resources to these goods that people have preferences for. Right? So that's kind of the big picture of the market and freedom and prices. So my point with all that is that if we think about what causes the business to want to supply beer or not, what drives them? What drives the business? What's the thing they're trying to maximize? The money, the profits, right? So here, our producers, these guys are trying to maximize profit. And these guys, the beer drinkers, what are they trying to maximize? Beer, average beer consumption, but beer makes them happy, right? It translates into happiness somehow, or as part of their event. I know it makes me happy once in a while. So maximize happiness, right? Their well-being, their welfare. So we talked about consumer surplus. Remember, when we get a deal, we can kind of translate the value of beer. And so this triangular region was the area of consumer surplus, and this was producer surplus. And so that is consumer preferences driving how many resources get allocated to beer. Okay, so what is Prohibition era?
Prohibition era is when there was a time where they used to sell alcohol in order to gain profits, but because they're making so much money, the government didn't allow it anymore. But yet they're still trying to find a way to accumulate some type of income.
Okay, good. So, good, Sam. So, you go by Sam or Samuel?
I go by Sam.
Sam, okay. You had Samuel on your little name tag thing there, so I thought it was Sam, but okay. So, in this case, Prohibition came about not because they were making so much money, but there was a little religious component. What Christian denomination is kind of the, historically, and not as true today, but don't drink, don't smoke, don't dance. Does anybody remember that? What denomination? Christian denomination. That's kind of strong that way. There was a movie called Footloose that talked about it. Old movie, but they actually redid that movie, I think, too. It's the Baptists. Guess what Ottawa University is? Based. Baptist. So we're American Baptists, which is a little bit different than Southern Baptists. So the Southern Baptists are still pretty strong, but they think that drinking alcohol is not good. And the government also might have thought, you know, we got people drinking, and now we have automobiles, and it's just it's a menace to society. It's a menace to society, right? And so Prohibition was prohibiting alcohol. Alcohol was illegal. Did you guys know that? Not everybody knows that, but probably, hopefully that was hit at some point in your life. So what happened is the government, through making alcohol illegal, turned a whole bunch of people into criminals overnight. Because did people stop drinking? No.
No.
So when you make, what do we call people who make illegal alcohol, because it was illegal? What do you call that back in the backwoods of Tennessee with the little distillery? What do we call those people? Moonshiners and bootleggers, right? So bootleggers. So there's kind of a story here related. I'm not going totally on a tangent, by the way. I'm trying to relate this back to here. Called Bootleggers and Baptists. And so during Prohibition, the Baptists were kind of the good side of it. Was moral to not allow alcohol. But it was also in the bootleggers' interest to keep Prohibition going, because they were making big money off of the government policy of making it illegal. So the bootleggers, kind of the wild, maybe drinking, high drinking, not so religious people, and the Baptists, the pious, the moral people, joined forces together. The bootleggers and Baptists joined forces to try to keep Prohibition alive. The legislation was passed, and then to try to keep it in line. So those are the types of incentives that can then play into the political arena if we start to have more and more of the resources being determined by political favors. So the Baptists won in terms of prohibiting alcohol, and then the bootleggers joined in because they found it very profitable to have that type of rule in place. So that sort of thing is kind of pushing our idea of freedom and being able to pursue what we want to do as long as we're not hurting other people. Okay, so let's clean this up here. I think that, I guess, kind of does it pretty good. Big business, I got that. All right, so I just want to do the example, bootleggers and Baptists. It's in your textbook, too. It's kind of a fun story. Bootlegger, and then your textbook goes over some other examples that is similar to the bootlegger Baptist, because that's just one classic example of how cronyism can kind of infiltrate things. So bootleggers, moonshine sellers, and Baptists were kind of the anti-alcohol for moral reasons. And the main thing is, these two unrelated groups may have a common thing here to play with the politicians. So these two join forces to get political favor. Okay, any questions or comments there? Well, mark your calendars. You're getting out early today. How about that? So let me get you guys on Zoom. Hold tight for attendance. Okay, Augie, gotcha. And Tyler, was it Tyler? Yeah, no. Oh, you're, yeah, okay, sorry, I had. Alright, Dawson. So Dawson, gotcha. Sam, gotcha. And Therese, gotcha. Alright, so all your homework, make sure you look at that. We got that due, of course, this weekend as usual. Oh, I did forget to tell you, I think I got some good news for you. I have changed the format moving forward so that you have 3 attempts on the test with no time limit. Here's the thing though, be careful. It is the average of your attempts. So that means you need to do your best shot on attempt number 1. But if you kind of mess it up, attempt number 2, you do better, you're going to bring your score up, right?
But there's no time limit?
But here's a bad strategy. Don't take the test not knowing crap and get a 10%, and then take the second attempt and you get a 90, you still only got a 50, right? So the incentive is to still do your best shot on your first attempt. But starting with week 3, yes, you'll have these 3 attempts. Also, anybody who wants to make up a previous test of week 1 or 2, everybody gets 1 freebie. What the freebie means is I'm going to wipe out your old score and give you another shot, and just email me which week you want to use your freebie on. All right, I'll try to put that in an email, but I meant to say that at the beginning of class and of course forgot.
Just in the first 2 weeks though?
Yeah, just for the first 2 weeks. The next ones going forward are going to have these multiple attempts.
Okay. And there's no time limit on this test?
Nope. Yeah. So you're not going to have that timer ticking.
Did you pass around?
Yeah. Alright. Let's see. Chris, oh, that's right. I did mark you down.
Yeah. Oh, so you got to talk to her about?
Yep.
Okay, so I honestly don't